A hospital in chaos, a life hanging by a thread, and a delivery girl who changes everything with a single, brilliant moment. Join us as we follow Penelope Hart, a disgraced medical prodigy turned delivery worker, whose sharp mind saves a dying patient, catching the eye of Dr. Henry Voss, a driven hospital director. From a whirlwind of sabotage and buried truths, to a fight for justice that unearths a framed father's legacy, their journey weaves through triumphs, heartbreak, and a romance that defies all odds. Each chapter unfolds with gripping twists: Penelope's battle against envy, Henry's quest for truth, and a finale that will leave you breathless. So, snuggle into your blankets, let the world fade, and let this story cradle you to sleep. Drop a comment to share where you're listening from, hit subscribe for more bedtime tales, and stick around. Will Penelope clear her father's name? You'll want to hear the end. The emergency room of St. Alara Medical Center was a war zone, a cacophony of desperation where hope clung to the edge of a razor. Monitors shrieked in discordant harmony, their red and green lines jagged with warning. Nurses darted between stations, their shouts swallowed by the chaos, while 20 doctors, some of the finest in the city, huddled around a gurney, their faces taut with fear. On it lay a man, no older than 30, his body racked by violent convulsions. His eyes rolled back, foam flecked his lips, and his pulse was a faint, erratic whisper on the screen. "Push another milligram of lorazepam," barked Dr. Evelyn Crane, her voice fraying. "It's not working," a younger resident countered, his hands trembling as he adjusted an IV. The air was thick with sweat and antiseptic, the kind of tension that could snap a soul in two. At the heart of the storm stood Dr. Henry Voss, the hospital's director, his blonde hair catching the harsh fluorescence like a beacon. His blue eyes, sharp as surgical steel, scanned the room. At 38, Henry was a man who thrived on control, his tailored white coat as immaculate as his reputation. But tonight, control was slipping. 15 seconds, he said, his voice low, lethal, as he glanced at the sleek watch on his wrist. "Stabilize him, or we're finished." The words landed like a guillotine, silencing the room for a fleeting moment. A nurse fumbled a syringe, and Dr. Crane's face blanched. "We've tried everything, sir," she stammered. "The tox screen's inconclusive. He's not responding." Henry didn't blink. He crossed his arms, his silence a challenge no one dared meet. The double doors to the ER slammed open, slicing through the tension like a scalpel. "Delivery! Black coffee, no sugar for Dr. Henry Voss!" The voice was clear, unshaken, cutting through the din with startling clarity. Heads turned, incredulous, as Penelope Hart strode in. Her blonde ponytail swung beneath a battered delivery helmet, and her green eyes sparkled with a defiance that seemed out of place in the sterile panic. Her uniform, damp with sweat from a night of pedaling through the city's humid streets, clung to her slight frame. She clutched a paper bag, the faint aroma of coffee mingling with the sharp sting of disinfectant. "This is a restricted area," snapped a nurse, her face flushed with indignation. Penelope tilted her head, unfazed. "Order number 72 placed at 10:15 a.m. for the director." "Says so right here." She held up her phone, the screen glowing with the app's confirmation. Every eye in the room swiveled to Henry. He raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "You're late," he said, his tone flat, though a flicker of curiosity danced in his gaze. "Traffic," Penelope shot back, her voice carrying a hint of a smirk. She stepped forward, undeterred by the glares, and handed him the bag. As she turned to leave, her gaze snagged on a monitor displaying the patient's chart. Status epilepticus, resistant to lorazepam. Vitals critical. Her breath caught, and she froze, her mind whirring like a machine long dormant. The numbers, the symptoms, they clicked into place with a clarity that felt like waking from a dream. "You're still running high-dose lorazepam?" she asked, pointing at the screen, her voice steady but laced with urgency. The room stilled. Dr. Crane scoffed, her lips curling. "What's this, WebMD? Get her out!" A murmur of agreement rippled through the doctors, but Penelope ignored them, her focus razor-sharp. "The tox screen missed something," she said, stepping closer to the monitor. "Check for organophosphate poisoning. Push atropine and pralidoxim, stat." Her words hung in the air, bold, impossible. A resident laughed nervously. "She's joking, right?" Henry stepped forward, his presence commanding silence. "You're diagnosing my patient." His voice was calm, but his eyes locked onto hers, searching for something. Fraud, perhaps, or genius. Penelope met his gaze unflinching. "I was top of my class at med school," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. "Dropped out after... Never mind. Trust me or don't." She grabbed a napkin from the coffee bag, scribbled a precise treatment protocol, dosages, timing, contingencies, and thrust it into Henry's hand. Her fingers brushed his, a fleeting spark in the chaos. "Do it," she said, then turned on her heel, the doors swinging shut behind her as she vanished into the night. The room erupted in protest. "She's a delivery girl," Dr. Crane snapped. "We're not following her orders." Henry stared at the napkin, its neat handwriting a stark contrast to the frenzy around him. The patient's monitor blared. A flat line loomed. "Do it," Henry barked, his voice brooking no argument. "Now." Nurses scrambled, vials clinked, and the drugs were administered. Seconds ticked by, agonizing, eternal. Then, a miracle. The convulsions slowed. The monitor's frantic beeps steadied. The patient's chest rose, fell, rose again. Alive. Silence blanketed the room, broken only by the soft hum of machines. Dr. Crane's jaw hung slack. The resident who'd laughed now stared at the floor. Henry turned the napkin over in his hand, his mind racing. "Who was that?" a nurse whispered, her voice trembling with awe. Henry's lips twitched, the ghost of a smile. He didn't know, not yet. But he would find out. Outside, Penelope pedaled through the city's neon glow, her heart pounding, not from the ride, but from the fire she'd just rekindled within herself. She had no idea the world was about to turn upside down. The city's pulse thrummed beneath a sky bruised with rain clouds, its neon lights smearing across wet asphalt. Penelope Hart pedaled her bicycle through the humid night, the adrenaline from St. Hilara's emergency room still sparking in her veins. Her delivery app pinged. Another order, another hustle to keep the lights on in her crumbling apartment. But her mind wasn't on the greasy takeout bag strapped to her back. It was on the patient's chart, the precise dosages she'd scribbled, the way Dr. Henry Voss's piercing blue eyes had locked onto hers, searching for something she wasn't ready to reveal. She'd walked back into a world she'd sworn to leave behind, and the weight of it pressed against her chest like a stone. By morning, the world had noticed. Penelope's phone buzzed relentlessly as she stirred a pot of oatmeal in her tiny kitchen. Notifications flooded her screen. Delivery girl saves life in seconds. The security footage from St. Hilara had leaked, spreading like wildfire across social media. A grainy clip showed her striding into the ER, blonde ponytail swinging, her voice cutting through the chaos with surgical precision. Comments poured in. Some called her a hero, others a fraud. "Probably Googled it," one sneered. "Who is she anyway?" another demanded. Penelope's stomach twisted. She knew what came next. Her mother, Clara, sat by the window in her wheelchair, her frail hands clutching a chipped mug. The TV blared a morning show, replaying the footage. "You're a hero, Pen," Clara said, her voice soft but proud, though her eyes were shadowed with worry. Penelope forced a smile, sliding a bowl of oatmeal onto the table. "It's trouble, Mom. They'll dig up Dad's case. Clara's face fell, and the room seemed to shrink, the peeling wallpaper closing in. 3 years ago, Dr. Frederick Hart, a revered physician, had been accused of malpractice after a patient died under his care. The scandal had destroyed him, his license revoked, his spirit broken. He'd died of a heart attack months later, leaving Penelope to abandon her medical dreams to care for Clara, whose grief had triggered a debilitating illness. The shame of her father's name had driven Penelope to the edges of survival, pedaling through the city to pay for Clara's meds. The TV switched to a pundit's smug face. Penelope Hart, once a medical prodigy, was expelled for defying protocol in a risky surgery. Is this a fluke or a fraud? And what about her father's negligence? Penelope snapped the TV off, her hands trembling. She grabbed her helmet, ready to escape into the rhythm of deliveries, but a knock at the door stopped her. Her brother, Ethan, 14 and wiry, peeked out. "It's reporters," he whispered, his eyes wide. Outside, a news van idled, microphones poised like vultures. "Penelope Hart, did you fake your ER stunt?" one shouted. She slammed the door, her heart racing. The past wasn't just haunting her, it was hunting her. Across town, in the sleek glass tower of St. Alara Medical Center, Henry Voss sat in his office, the city sprawling below like a chessboard. The ER footage played on his laptop, paused on Penelope's face, those green eyes, fierce with focus, betraying a mind that refused to bend. He'd seen brilliance before, but this was different. It was raw, unshackled, the kind of genius that could shift the world. His assistant Lila, a sharp-eyed woman with a tablet always in hand, slid a file across his desk. "Penelope Hart," she said. "Valedictorian at Westbridge Medical Academy, full scholarship. Expelled after saving a patient with an unauthorized craniotomy. Brilliant, but against orders. Banned from medicine. And her father?" Lila hesitated. "Dr. Frederick Hart, accused of overdosing a patient, leading to cardiac arrest. Case closed, but the autopsy reports are inconsistent. Missing samples, rushed conclusions." Henry leaned back, his fingers steepled. "Someone buried the truth," he murmured, his voice low, dangerous. He traced the edge of the file, his mind replaying the napkin in his hand, Penelope's precise handwriting. "Why's a woman like that delivering coffee?" he asked, more to himself than Lila. "Survival," Lila replied. "Her mother's sick. They're drowning in debt." Henry's jaw tightened. He knew what it was to fight against odds. His own rise to director had been a battle against skeptics who doubted his youth. "Keep digging," he ordered. "Find out who wanted Frederick Hart ruined." Lila nodded, slipping out, leaving Henry staring at the frozen image of Penelope. He didn't know her, but he felt the pull of something inevitable, like a tide drawing him toward her shore. Back at her apartment, Penelope dodged another reporter, slipping out a back alley to her bike. The city's hum was a comfort, its chaos a shield. But her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Special delivery, 7 p.m. tonight. HV." Her breath caught. Henry Voss. The address was an upscale restaurant, far from her usual delivery haunts. Curiosity warred with caution. She should ignore it, keep her head down, let the world forget her. But the memory of the ER, the rush of saving a life, the spark of being seen, burned too bright. She pocketed her phone, pedaling into the dusk, unaware that eyes were already watching her, whispering her name in boardrooms and newsrooms alike. The rain began to fall, soft at first, then insistent, soaking her uniform. Penelope didn't care. She'd faced worse storms. But as she rode, a shadow lingered in her periphery, a figure in a dark coat, too still, too watchful. She shook it off, blaming her nerves, but the unease clung like damp cloth. At St. Alara, Henry closed his laptop. the footage still looping in his mind. He glanced at the city beyond his window, where Penelope was a speck in the neon haze. "Who are you, Penelope Hart?" he whispered. The answer, he knew, would change everything. The city's dusk was a watercolor of amber and ash, its streets alive with the hum of evening commuters. Penelope Hart weaved through the chaos on her bicycle, the weight of her delivery bag a familiar anchor. Her phone, tucked in her pocket, felt like a ticking bomb since that cryptic text from Henry Voss. "Special delivery. 7 p.m. tonight. HV." The address, a high-end restaurant called Lumiere, loomed in her mind, its elegance a world apart from the greasy diners she usually served. Her green eyes, shadowed with exhaustion, flicked to the horizon. Reporters had hounded her all day, their questions like knives. "Is your father's negligence in your blood?" The viral ER footage had turned her into a spectacle, and the shadow she'd glimpsed in the alley last night lingered like a bad dream. She pedaled faster, as if outrunning the past was possible. At 6:58 p.m., Penelope skidded to a stop outside Lumiere, its glass facade gleaming under golden lights. Her faded jeans and sweat-streaked delivery jacket drew stares from valets in crisp uniforms. She adjusted her helmet, heart thudding, and stepped inside. The restaurant was a symphony of crystal chandeliers and hushed laughter, its patrons draped in silk and wealth. Penelope felt like an intruder, her sneakers squeaking on the marble floor. A hostess eyed her skeptically. "Delivery entrances around back," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. Penelope held up her phone. "I'm here for Henry Voss. He's expecting me." The hostess's eyes widened, and she led Penelope to a private table on a mezzanine overlooking the city's twinkling skyline. Henry sat there, his blonde hair catching the candlelight, his tailored suit accentuating a frame that radiated authority. His blue eyes met hers, and for a moment, the room faded. "You're on time," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Barely," Penelope replied, sliding into the chair opposite him, her bag slung over the back. "What's this about? I've got deliveries stacked up." Henry leaned forward, his gaze steady, searching. "I want you at St. Alara, as a doctor." The words hit like a shockwave. Penelope laughed, sharp and bitter, the sound drawing curious glances from nearby tables. "I'm banned from medicine. My license was revoked. You know that." Henry didn't flinch. "I know you saved a man in seconds, with a napkin and a hunch. I know you're brilliant." His voice was low, earnest, cutting through her defenses. "The ban is bureaucracy. I can fight it. Work for me and I'll get you reinstated." Penelope's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. The offer was a lifeline, but it came with a price. Her father's scandal, Dr. Frederick Hart's alleged malpractice, hung over her like a guillotine. "My name is Poison," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The press is already tearing me apart. You hire me, they'll come for you too." Henry's smile was unyielding, almost defiant. "Let them. I care about results, not rumors. You're what this hospital needs." His sincerity was disarming, a crack in the armor of a man who seemed untouchable. Penelope's mind raced back to the ER, the rush of saving a life, the part of her she'd buried when she'd traded her stethoscope for a delivery bag. Before she could respond, a shadow fell over the table. Dr. Vivian Strathmore, a senior surgeon at St. Alara, stood there, her sleek black dress accentuating a presence as sharp as her scalpel. Her dark eyes glittered with malice as they raked over Penelope. "Henry, slumming it with delivery girls now?" she purred, her voice laced with venom. "This is your savior from the ER? A heart?" The name dripped with contempt, a reminder of Penelope's tainted legacy. Henry's jaw tightened. "Vivian, this isn't your concern," she laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Be careful, Henry. Bad blood taints everything. Her father killed a patient. She'll drag you down with her. Penelope's face burned, but she held Vivian's gaze, refusing to shrink. Enjoy your evening, Vivian said, sauntering away, her words lingering like poison. The air felt heavier now, the city's lights blurring beyond the window. Penelope stood, grabbing her bag. This was a mistake. Henry caught her wrist, his touch gentle but firm. Don't run, he said. You're better than their lies. She pulled away, her voice trembling. You don't know me, but his eyes said otherwise, as if he saw the woman she'd been before the world broke her. Give me a chance to, he said. Come to the hospital tomorrow. See what you're capable of. Penelope hesitated, the weight of her past clashing with a spark of possibility. I'll think about it, she said finally, turning toward the exit, her heart a battlefield. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the city slick and reflective. Penelope mounted her bike, Henry's words echoing, You're what this hospital needs. She thought of her mother, Clara, wasting away in that wheelchair, and Ethan, her brother, dreaming of a future she could barely afford. The restaurant's glow faded behind her, but Vivian's warning clung like damp air. As she pedaled home, a black car idled at the curb, its tinted windows hiding watchful eyes. Penelope didn't notice, but the city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her next move. At St. Alara, Henry stood by his office window, the file on Penelope open on his desk. Lila's findings, discrepancies in Frederick Hart's case, a detective's sudden wealth burned in his mind. He didn't know why he was drawn to her, but he felt it. A collision of fates, inevitable and unstoppable. Find that detective, he told Lila, his voice resolute. I want answers. The night stretched on, and somewhere in the city, a storm was gathering. The sterile hum of St. Alara Medical Center was a balm to Penelope Hart's restless soul as she stepped into its halls, her white coat crisp against her shoulders for the first time in years. The weight of Henry Voss's offer had kept her awake, her mind wrestling with fear and longing until dawn. She'd stood at her apartment's cracked window, watching the city stir, and thought of her mother, Clara, whose medicine bottles lined the counter, and her brother Ethan, whose dreams deserved more than their crumbling life. Henry's words, "You're what this hospital needs," had tipped the scales. Now, as she clipped her temporary ID badge to her coat, the past felt like a shadow she could outrun, if only for a day. Her first shift was a whirlwind. A teenage girl arrived comatose, her labs a puzzle no one could crack. Penelope, scanning the chart, spotted a faint clue. Elevated lactate levels buried in the blood work. "It's not sepsis," she said, her voice cutting through the attending's debate. "Check for mitochondrial encephalopathy." The team hesitated, but her certainty was infectious. Tests confirmed her diagnosis, and treatment began, pulling the girl back from the brink. By noon, whispers spread. The delivery girl's a prodigy. By evening, she'd caught a misdiagnosed aortic dissection in an elderly man, her calm precision saving him mid-surgery. St. Alara's reputation soared, its halls buzzing with talk of the blonde doctor who saw what others missed. But brilliance breeds envy, and Dr. Vivian Strathmore was its venomous herald. From her perch in the surgical wing, Vivian watched Penelope's rise with a predator's gaze. Her sleek, dark hair and tailored scrubs masked a fury that simmered since their encounter at Lumiere. "She's Henry's pet," she hissed to a cluster of residents in the break room, her voice low but sharp. No degree, no license, yet she waltzes in. It's favoritism, not talent. The residents nodded, eager to curry favor with the hospital's surgical queen. Vivian's words spread like wildfire, tainting Penelope's victories with doubt. The tension erupted during a critical case. A toddler, barely 3, wheeled in with septic shock, his tiny body burning with fever. Penelope led the team, her orders swift: fluids, broad-spectrum antibiotics, pressors. But as she reached for a syringe of epinephrine, the label caught her eye. Wrong dosage, swapped with a lethal concentration. Her heart stopped. "Who prepped this?" she demanded, her voice steel. A nurse glanced at Vivian, who stood at the room's edge, her face unreadable. Penelope swapped the syringe, stabilizing the child, but the near disaster left her shaken. In the corridor, Vivian smirked. "Careful, Hart. Mistakes like that could cost you everything." The hospital wasn't Penelope's only battlefield. Outside, reporters camped like vultures, their cameras flashing as she left each shift. "Is negligence genetic?" one shouted. The question a dagger to her heart. Her father's scandal, Dr. Frederick Hart's alleged malpractice, clung to her, amplified by her sudden fame. At home, an eviction notice stared from the kitchen table, their landlord's patience gone. Ethan, 14 and fierce, hugged her tightly. "You're unstoppable, Pen. Don't let them win." But the weight was crushing. She clutched Henry's business card, its edges worn from her fingers, and whispered, "I have to keep going." Henry, meanwhile, was waging his war. In his office, he pored over Lila's latest findings. The detective in Frederick's case, Marcus Klein, had fled to a coastal town after a $200,000 deposit hit his account days after the trial. "Someone bought his silence," Henry muttered, his jaw tight. Lila nodded. "And the toxicology reports? Tampered. The patient's death didn't match Hart's treatment." Henry's eyes darkened. He'd seen Penelope's brilliance firsthand, her unshakable resolve. Why had she been cast out? And why did he feel this pull, this need to unravel her past? He pushed the thought aside, focusing on the file. "Track Klein," he ordered. "I want him found." Penelope's days blurred into a rhythm of miracles and malice. She saved a woman with a rare blood disorder, earning a nod from the chief of medicine, but found her locker defaced with fraud in red marker. She diagnosed a child's leukemia misread as anemia, yet overheard nurses whispering Vivian's lies. "She's here because Henry pities her." The sabotage escalated, missing charts, delayed lab results. But Penelope adapted, her mind a fortress. Still, the press grew bolder, their headlines vicious. Hart's daughter, hero or hazard. One evening, exhausted, she found Ethan watching the news, his face pale. "They're lying, Pen," he said. "Dad wasn't a killer." She hugged him, hiding her tears. "I know, Ethan, I'll prove it." Henry saw the toll. In a rare quiet moment, he found her in the hospital's chapel, staring at the flickering candles. "You're changing lives," he said, his voice soft. "Don't let them dim you." Penelope's eyes met his, raw with vulnerability. "Why do you believe in me?" she asked. Henry hesitated, then said, "Because I see the truth in you." The words hung between them, a spark in the dim light. He stepped closer, but a pager's shrill beep broke the moment. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll talk about your future here." Penelope nodded, her resolve reigniting. As she left, a figure watched from the shadows, Vivian, her phone in hand, recording. The hospital's halls seemed to tighten, a storm brewing within its walls. Penelope didn't see the black car trailing her bike home, its engine a low growl in the night. The fluorescent lights of St. Hilaire Medical Center buzzed like a distant swarm, casting stark shadows across the hospital's corridors. Penelope Hart moved through them with purpose, her white coat a shield against the whispers that trailed her. Each day was a gauntlet, saving lives while dodging the venom of those who saw her as an imposter. Her triumphs, from diagnosing a rare blood disorder to averting surgical disasters, had made her a legend among patients, but a target among peers. Vivian Strathmore's campaign of doubt had taken root, her words spreading like a toxin. Henry's pet, not a doctor. Yet Penelope pressed on, driven by the flicker of hope Henry had ignited in the chapel the night before. His words, "I see the truth in you," echoed in her mind, a lifeline amid the storm. Morning rounds brought a new challenge. A middle-aged woman, Mrs. Lena Carver, gasping for air, her oxygen levels plummeting. The attending physician suspected pneumonia, but Penelope's instincts screamed otherwise. She studied the chart, her green eyes narrowing. "It's pulmonary embolism," she said, her voice cutting through the team's debate. "Order a CT angiogram and start heparin." The residents hesitated, glancing at Vivian, who hovered nearby, her dark eyes glinting. "Bold call for someone without a license," Vivian remarked, her tone syrupy with malice. Penelope ignored her, directing the team with quiet authority. The scan confirmed her diagnosis, and Lena stabilized by noon. A grateful family clutched Penelope's hands, tears in their eyes, but Vivian's smirk lingered like a bruise. The sabotage grew bolder. That afternoon, Penelope found her patient's notes altered, critical dosages changed to dangerous levels. She caught the errors before harm was done, but the pattern was clear. In the locker room, her stethoscope vanished, replaced with a note: "Leave, fraud." Her heart pounded, but she refused to break. Ethan's words, "You're unstoppable, Pen," kept her anchored. At home, the eviction notice loomed, and Clara's medicine bottles were nearly empty. Penelope's resolve hardened. She wouldn't let Vivian win. Henry Voss, meanwhile, was unraveling a darker thread. In his office, the city's skyline a gray blur beyond the glass, he pored over Lila's latest report. The detective in Frederick Hart's case, Marcus Klein, had surfaced in a coastal town, living under an alias. A $200,000 deposit had hit his account days after Frederick's conviction, traced to an offshore shell company. "The toxicology reports were faked," Lila said, her voice low. "The patient's death was pinned on Hart, but the drug levels don't match his prescription." Henry's jaw clenched. "Who paid Klein?" Lila hesitated. "We're close. The shell company links to a prominent physician, possibly Roland Carver, Hart's rival." Henry's eyes darkened. Roland, a titan in the medical world, had clashed with Frederick over hospital contracts years ago. "Find Klein," Henry ordered. "I want his confession." Henry's faith in Penelope wasn't just professional. Her resilience, her fire, stirred something in him he hadn't felt in years. A belief in something beyond ambition. He found her in the hospital cafeteria, her face pale but defiant, sipping coffee alone. "You're holding up," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Barely," she admitted, her voice raw. "Vivian's not stopping." Henry leaned in, his gaze steady. "Neither are you. I'm addressing the staff today. This ends." Penelope's eyes searched his. "Why risk your reputation for me?" He paused, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his face. "Because you're worth it, and because your father's case stinks of injustice." He slid a folder across the table. "Klein was bribed. The truth is close." Before she could respond, Henry stood, his voice firm. "Keep fighting, Penelope. I've got your back." That evening, he addressed the hospital staff in the auditorium, his presence commanding. "Penelope Hart's work speaks for itself," he said, his tone icy. "Harass her, question her integrity, and you're out, no exceptions." The room was silent, but Vivian in the back smiled thinly, her phone hidden in her palm. Vivian's next move was ruthless. She leaked altered patient records to the press, framing Penelope for near-fatal errors in Lena Carver's case. Headlines erupted. "Hart's daughter endangers lives." The board called an emergency meeting, and Penelope was summoned. Standing before the panel, her heart raced as Vivian presented falsified logs, her voice dripping with faux concern. "She's a liability," Vivian said. Penelope's hands shook, but she produced her own evidence, original notes, time-stamped backups, and a nurse's testimony exposing Vivian's tampering. The board suspended Vivian pending investigation, But the damage was done. Reporters swarmed the hospital, shouting, "Are you your father's daughter?" Penelope's chest tightened, the world closing in. Henry found her on the hospital roof, the city's lights a distant haze. "You didn't deserve this," he said, his voice soft. Penelope's eyes glistened. "I can't keep fighting shadows." Henry stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "You won't. I'm nominating you for Doctor of the Year. Show them who you are." Her breath caught. "You're insane." He smiled, a rare warmth in his eyes. "Maybe. But I believe in you." The moment lingered, electric, until a siren wailed below, pulling them back to reality. As Penelope left, a black car idled across the street, its driver snapping photos. Vivian, reinstated on a technicality, watched from a hospital window, her plan far from over. Henry, in his office, dialed Lila. "Get me Klein's location, now." The truth was within reach, but so was danger. The city glittered below St. Alara Medical Center's rooftop, its lights a defiant constellation against the encroaching dusk. Penelope Hart stood at the edge, the wind tugging at her white coat, her heart still racing from Henry Voss's words. "I'm nominating you for Doctor of the Year." The weight of Vivian Strathmore's sabotage, leaked records, vicious headlines, pressed against her. But Henry's belief was a spark in the dark. Her green eyes traced the horizon, where her past and future seemed to collide. She thought of her father, Dr. Frederick Hart, his legacy tarnished by lies, and her mother Clara, fading in that wheelchair. "I'll show them," she whispered, her voice steel as she turned back to the hospital's glow. The Doctor of the Year Gala was a spectacle of opulence, held in a grand ballroom draped in gold and crystal. Penelope, in a simple emerald gown borrowed from a nurse friend, felt like an interloper among the elite physicians in tailored tuxedos and shimmering dresses. Her blonde hair was swept into a loose bun, her face bare of makeup, save for a touch of lip gloss, yet heads turned as she entered. Whispers followed. "That's Hart's daughter." Some were curious, others cruel. Vivian Strathmore, reinstated after a technicality, glided through the crowd, her black gown a stark contrast to her predatory smile. "Enjoy your moment, Hart," she hissed, brushing past. "It won't last." The ceremony began, the host's voice booming over clinking glasses. Penelope sat at a table near the back, her hands clasped to hide their tremble. Henry, at the head table, caught her eye, his blonde hair catching the chandelier's light, his blue eyes steady with unspoken support. The nominees were announced, their achievements lauded. Decades of research, groundbreaking surgeries. Then, her name, Penelope Hart, for unparalleled diagnostic innovation at St. Alara. A murmur rippled through the room, some clapping, others scoffing. Vivian's laugh was sharp, audible even over the applause. When the host opened the golden envelope, the room held its breath. "Penelope Hart," he declared. The crowd erupted, a mix of cheers and stunned silence. Penelope froze, her heart pounding as cameras flashed. She walked to the stage, each step a defiance of the doubts that had haunted her. Taking the Crystal Award, she faced the sea of faces, her voice clear despite the knot in her throat. "This is for my father, Dr. Frederick Hart," she said. "He was innocent, and I'll prove it. And for every patient who trusted me to fight for them." The applause grew, but Vivian's glare was a dagger, and whispers of negligence lingered among skeptics. After the ceremony, Henry found her in a quiet alcove, the award clutched tightly in her hands. "You were magnificent," he said, his voice warm. Penelope's eyes glistened. "They still see my father's shadow." Henry stepped closer, his presence a shield. "Let them. You're rewriting the story." He guided her to a private dinner in a candlelit room overlooking the city, reserved for gala VIPs. The table was set for two, a rare intimacy amid their chaotic world. As they sat, Henry raised a glass of champagne. "To you, Penelope, you've changed this hospital, and me." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Penelope's breath caught, sensing a shift. Henry set his glass down, his gaze unwavering. "I've spent years building walls," he said, his voice low, raw. "Work, control, ambition. That's all I knew. Then you walked into my ER, saw what no one else could, and broke through. Your courage, your heart, they've shown me what matters." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Penelope's eyes widened as he knelt, opening it to reveal a sapphire ring, its deep blue echoing his eyes. "Penelope Hart, will you marry me?" Time seemed to stop. Tears spilled down her cheeks, not from fear, but from a joy she'd never dared imagine. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. 1,000 times, yes. Henry slid the ring onto her finger, his hands steady despite the emotion in his eyes. They stood, his arms enveloping her, the city's lights a silent witness to their promise. But outside, cameras flashed through the restaurant's windows, reporters already crafting headlines. "Scandalous romance at St. Alara?" The moment was fleeting. Henry's phone buzzed and Lila's urgent voice came through. "We've found Marcus Klein. He's ready to talk, but it's risky. Meet me tomorrow." Henry's jaw tightened. "Klein confessed?" he asked, glancing at Penelope. Lila's reply was grim. "He says Roland Carver framed Frederick Hart, paid him $200,000 to fake the evidence. But Carver's onto us." Penelope's heart raced. Roland Carver, a medical titan, had crushed her father out of envy. Now, the truth was within reach, but so was danger. As they left the restaurant, hand in hand, a black car peeled away from the curb, its taillights vanishing into the night. Vivian, watching from the shadows, dialed a number, her voice cold. "She's getting too close. Handle it." The city seemed to hold its breath, its pulse quickening as the stakes rose. The city woke to a dawn sharp with reckoning, its skyline etched against a sky of molten gold. Penelope Hart stood at her apartment window, the sapphire ring on her finger catching the light, a tangible promise of Henry Voss's love. Last night's proposal had been a beacon in the storm. But Lila's warning, "Roland Carver's onto us," cast a shadow. Marcus Klein's confession, implicating Carver in framing her father, Dr. Frederick Hart, was a fuse ready to ignite. Penelope's green eyes hardened. She'd spent years running from her past. Now, she would face it head-on. Her phone buzzed with a text from Henry. "Meet me at St. Alara. We end this today." At the hospital, Henry was a force of nature, his blonde hair disheveled from a sleepless night, his blue eyes burning with resolve. Lila handed him a flash drive. "Klein's recorded confession," she said. "He details Carver's $200,000 bribe to fake toxicology reports, pinning a patient's death on Frederick Hart. But Carver's lawyers are circling." Henry nodded, his jaw tight. "Send copies to the press and the medical board. Now." Penelope arrived, her white coat a symbol of her reclaimed purpose. "You're sure?" she asked, her voice steady despite the stakes. Henry took her hand, his touch grounding. "For you. For your father. Yes." The truth broke like a tidal wave. By noon, headlines screamed, "Medical Titan, Roland Carver, accused of framing innocent doctor." Klein's confession, backed by financial records, exposed Carver's envy of Frederick's rising star. The patient's death, ruled as malpractice, was now linked to Carver's sabotage, a deliberate overdose masked as error. Carver was arrested outside his mansion, cameras capturing his ashen face as he was led away in cuffs. The medical board reopened Frederick's case, posthumously restoring his license. Penelope, watching the news in the hospital break room, felt tears burn her cheeks. "We did it, Dad," she whispered, clutching a photo of him, his kind smile frozen in time. But victory came with scars. Vivian Strathmore, exposed as Carver's ally after leaked texts, revealed her role in leaking Penelope's records, was permanently banned from medicine. Her final act, tipping Carver off about Klein, had nearly derailed the truth. Reporters swarmed St. Hilaire, but this time their tone shifted. Penelope, heart vindicated. Patients she'd saved sent flowers, their notes calling her a hero. At home, Clara, Penelope's mother, walked with a cane, her health bolstered by new treatments Henry funded. Ethan, her brother, thrived in a top school, his math talent shining. Yet Penelope felt a quiet ache. Justice had come too late for her father. The wedding was a dream, woven from hope, held at a seaside estate where white roses cascaded like waves. Penelope, radiant in an ivory lace gown, carried a locket with Frederick's photo, a silent vow to honor him. Clara, stronger now, walked her down the aisle, her eyes bright with pride. Henry stood at the altar, his tuxedo accentuating his quiet strength, his face softening as Penelope approached. Their vows were a tapestry of their journey. "Penelope," Henry began, his voice trembling, "you taught me that healing is love, that truth is worth any fight. I promise to stand by you, always." Penelope's voice cracked with emotion. "Henry, you saw me when I was invisible. I promise to build a life of purpose with you, to never forget the spark that changed us." They exchanged rings, sealing their love with a kiss as golden petals rained down, the crowd erupting in cheers. The reception was a celebration of resilience, with tables laden with dishes Penelope designed, each a nod to her father's passion for nurturing through care. Guests included hospital staff, patients whose lives she'd saved, and even a repentant nurse who'd once doubted her. As they danced, Henry whispered, "You're my miracle." Penelope smiled, then leaned in. "We're not done yet." She led him to a stage where Ethan, grinning mischievously, grabbed the microphone. "Big announcement," he shouted. "Penelope and Henry are opening the Frederick Hart Memorial Hospital for those who can't afford care." The crowd roared, and Penelope's heart swelled. It was her father's legacy reborn, a beacon for the underserved. As the night deepened, Penelope and Henry slipped to the estate's garden, the ocean's murmur a soft lullaby. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, her hand guiding his to her belly. "A boy." Henry's eyes glistened, his voice thick. "Our little Frederick." They embraced, the stars above a silent witness. "Your father's watching," Henry said, kissing her forehead. Penelope looked up, a star twinkling brighter. "Love's here, Dad," she murmured. "Forever." 6 months later, the Frederick Hart Memorial Hospital opened, its doors welcoming the city's forgotten. Penelope, now a celebrated physician, led with compassion, while Henry, still St. Hilaire's director, championed her vision. Their son, Frederick Voss, was born, his tiny hand gripping Penelope's finger, a promise of continuity. Under a starlit sky, outside their new hospital, they stood together, the sign glowing, Frederick Hart Memorial. The city's pulse beat on, but for Penelope and Henry, it was a rhythm of hope, a legacy forged from justice and love. And so, Penelope and Henry's story comes to a close, a tale of courage, love, and a legacy reborn. What did it stir in you? Did Penelope's fight for justice move you, or was it their love that lit a spark? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let us know where you're listening from. Your voice is part of this journey. Thank you for curling up with us tonight, for letting this story cradle you into dreams. We're grateful for every moment you share with us. Until next time, sweet dreams, and we'll meet again under the stars for another tale. Subscribe, and let's keep the magic alive.